I wanted to keep on that Catholic theme for a moment. My parents are visiting today. My mom and dad are here. And I was standing at the back door, or the front door as you come in, and greeting people. And along came my dad, and I said, "Hello." And he says, "Hello, son." And I said, wanting to be a true Catholic, I said, "You should call me Father." So, pastors need someone who they can talk to be an emotional support with the stresses and strains of ministry. Pastors need someone who they can trust to go to and talk about difficult situations or opportunities or situations where you haven't met the mark in your ministry, or for wisdom about what to do with a complex problem. And every pastor needs one of those. And I've needed that. I've found that in a pastor prof who was at Peace River Bible Institute up near Grand Prairie. And he was my confidant, my encouragement. He was my soul care person. He was a guy who I would go to just to bounce things off of and to get encouragement and support from. But that really can't be just anyone that you do that with. Because when you are sharing those kind of things with someone, you need certain characteristics or traits in that person. Someone who you can trust, because you're being vulnerable. You're often just talking about the things where you've failed, or situations where you feel like you've failed. And you don't want to lay that out for just anybody off the street, so to speak. You need someone who's got the characteristics and traits of a caring person. And what we're doing here today as beginning of soul care is looking at the traits of a caring person. You'll remember that since I've come here, we started the first series that we did was on the values of the church. And there's a piece of paper, our values. It won't be in your don't bother looking in your current bulletin because it's not there. It's been in previous bulletins. And the values that we've had have been to be gospel-driven, putting the gospel of Jesus Christ as central. To be truth-based is another value. To embrace all of God's truth and make it real in our lives. To be an authentic community. To be really, truly involved with one another, in each other's lives in a supportive way. To be missional. That is to, as Nathan had mentioned, about serving God out in our community, being the arms and legs of Jesus in our community and bringing that gospel message. That's being missional. And then being transparent, we talked about, which relates to being authentic. Just being that vulnerable person who doesn't put on a mask and make themselves to look like something that they're not. Just be transparent Christians. What you see is what you get. And then the last thing we talked about is being a caring community. These are things that we value in the church. These are things that are real. As people come and visit us, they get a sense of these characteristics in us. And we hope that by the Spirit they will develop in us. And the last one that we mentioned was caring. And that's the one we're trying to focus on in particular with soul care. Soul care is about training us to be caring people. And as Pastor Robert had mentioned, part of that's listening, and we're going to develop some listening skills. And part of it is just having a sense of what to say to others who are in need. We're going to develop those caring traits. And so to do that, it isn't simply a matter of hearing a message from the Scriptures. We also need to develop the real hands-on skills in a way that's not awkward for anyone. Well, maybe slightly awkward because that's how we grow. But a skill-based seminar. And that's what we're going to do today. Is the message is going to come on the example of Jesus. And then we're going to go after lunch. We're going to do the sort of a little bit more training. And then we're actually going to break into maybe little small groups or something like that and test out a skill or two. in a way that hopefully encourages us all. And my goal is that as many people as can would attend that. If you consider yourself in any way part of this church, even if you're just a visitor, really want to encourage you to come to be part of that, because we want to help one another grow in reflecting and growing into the image of Christ. And so please stick around after the service today for that. Now the sermon today is about being caring. And we want to follow the example in all these messages and all of our training, the example of Jesus. And I want you to turn in your Bibles, please, to the Gospel according to John in the 10th chapter. I'm going to read that passage for you. It's often called the Good Shepherd passage. And just so you know, I don't have the Bible verses up on the PowerPoint. So some people do. I don't. And it's intentional. Because what I'm wanting you to do is, as I speak, not sort of be looking over my shoulder at the Bible passage that's there, but looking down on your lap at the Scriptures, so that you're concentrating as well on what the Scriptures say. Those Scriptures that you bring home with you, those Scriptures that you can read at home, those Scriptures that should be part of your daily life, not just your Sunday life. And so in a sense, it's very intentional that I don't have the Scriptures up there, because I want to encourage you to bring your Bibles and engage with the Bible that's right in your hands, so you can continue that process during the week. Here's what John says in chapter 10. I'm going to read verses 1 through 6 and then verse 22. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in another way, that man is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the gatekeeper opens. The sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. A stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers. Verse 6, this figure of speech Jesus used with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. And verse 22 says, at that time the feast of dedication took place at Jerusalem. So we get the setting here. It was one of the great feasts of Israel. Now Jesus is using the imagery of a shepherd and sheep. And that would be a common experience for the people of that time, to see a shepherd with his sheep. Now we don't see that on a daily basis, but to them the imagery would be alive. It would be something that they're likely to see just on the outskirts of their town, or if they're in a small rural town, they're going to see that on a daily basis just naturally. Jesus doesn't take something foreign, he takes something that's part of their everyday life, and he builds his illustration from that. But the illustration also has a rich history in the Old Testament, and you're probably very much aware of that. That God sees his people as himself as the shepherd of Israel, and the people as his flock. You can think, of course, of Psalm 23, one of the most famous passages in the Bible. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. So Israel, the people, would know that we are the sheep and God is the shepherd. Jesus has that, of course, in his mind as he begins to give this teaching. And then God also sees his agents, his leaders, as shepherds. So God is the chief shepherd, and the leaders of the people, that would be the teachers, the rabbis, and various other priests and leaders of different sorts, they are shepherds. For example, David and Moses both served as literal shepherds of sheep and also served as shepherds of the people, as leaders. And God uses the words of shepherding to describe them in their roles with people.